Over the past 50 years, Climatech has grown and kept pace with the ever-changing HVAC industry, providing our customers with the best knowledge on the most innovative systems and services.
Serving Lorain and western Cuyahoga counties, Climatech is a full-service heating, air conditioning, and ventilation company. A third-generation, family-owned and operated company providing the most up-to-date level of service and installation with the best quality products.
Today, your comfort demands customized solutions, utilizing best industry practice combined with high-quality, reliable products that protect you and your home.
The HVAC industry will never stand still. It's a commitment to the environment that we learn, train, and produce next-level efficient products and services.
Partnering with Green Sky Financing and our dedicated customer care software allows us to give you the comfort that you need in your home.
Smart products, smart technicians, and dedication to details drive us to deliver highly effective products into your home today and into the future.
Well, it's officially now week 9 of the Climatech Inc. NFL prediction show. And of course, it's the week of Halloween. And as everybody knows, the backstory to this show and behind the scenes, we record on Tuesdays. So Vince got to be out trick-or-treating. So again, a shout out to of course, his girl's going to go out there and trick-or-treat, enjoy this evening. And for all the candy that Vince is going to get to eat by way of that. So before we get to the show, again, Vince, happy to have you. What did you have candy-wise before you got here on the show?
There was a happy medium of a little bit of everything, but I stuck to the licorice. I love licorice, and I love gummies. Mm-hmm. But tonight was more so for me a Starburst night. So I had a lot of pink and cherry Starburst, my two favorite flavors with them. And there was a healthy amount of licorice pieces and mixed in some of these, which you're a gummy guy like I am. We love our gummies. They have this new, well, it's probably not new, but I'm seeing it for the first time recently. Gummy Jolly Ranchers. So it's just a gummy, but it's Jolly Ranchers. So stuck with them, steered clear of the chocolate for the most part, and feeling good. So I don't really have too much of a sugar buzz going on right now. I have my new water bottle that I got from WWE.com, which is like twice the size of the ones I normally drink. So I'm just trying to water myself out to contain all the sugar.
That sounds good. I think before we get into all that stuff, I have to say this. If you like Starburst, to me, I've always been more of a Mamba guy because everybody knows about Starburst. But I think Starburst, because they're a little bit smaller, more compact, they're a little harder. Mambas have great flavor. They're a little chewier. Again, that's my go-to. I know of other people that would disagree with that. But again, Mambas, that's kind of the thing for me. I think I know Aldi obviously sold it for many years, but I think it started to branch out to more and more stores now. So I think it's easier to find those.
You do. You don't really see them too much on Halloween, but if you do go to the stores, they're in every candy aisle. I will say this as well. Shout out to our sponsor, BA Sweetie. I mean, that place has everything you want to find. I know Climatech sponsor this show, but if you go on the website, BA Sweetie has actually been with me since day one. Even at my last job, I brought him over to Keon Sports, and shout out to Tom Scheinman, who obviously had a large night to say the least. But I was going somewhere with this now. I forgot. Oh yeah. So speaking of the Mambas, though, you were a Little League baseball player, like I was a Little League baseball player, and then a coach. I love anything that you could pretend to be chewing tobacco. So I would have Mambas in there some games. I would stuff in the Starburst, but maybe sometimes, speaking of Starburst jelly beans, which, by the way, are the only jelly beans I like, and obviously Big League Chew. So anytime as a kid you could pretend to be a big leaguer and have that chaw in there, that pretend chaw, just makes it so much more fun. And, my wife, Emily, I got to give her a little bit of grief, hates it. So to this day, even when I put in a mince, and I probably have like 4 or 5 mints a day when I work, every single time I pull back the lip, I pop it in, and make it seem like I'm packing in a chew. And if she's in the room, she is so irritated by that. So I will continue to do it.
Yeah, I think later in the season, it was one of my college soccer years. I can't remember if it was sophomore or junior year, but I had a little bit of an injury where it was just a little bit of a nick, something that kept me out for about 1 or 2 games. And I remember there was this one game that it was at home. It was conference play. We're all wearing our winter coats that we have. our team winter coats because it's cold out there. But I remember just watching that game, sitting over there on the bench watching, but I had taken those like Black Forest chewy, almost like Starburst like things, shoved those in my pockets of my coat. I'm just watching the game from the bench over there, just snacking on those things throughout the whole time, sometimes passing them off to some other people and stuff. So no, that's pretty funny. So
AFC, well, real quick, AFC Cleveland Royals, the first team I ever broadcasted, got my start with, my very start. AFC Cleveland Royals, me and shout out to my guy, Eli Mooningham, who was my color guy back then. We would go in the locker room, pregame, postgame, do interviews. It was awesome. And I'll never forget, every single game, the AFC Cleveland Royals would have gigantic bags of gummy worms, gummy lifesavers. So it doesn't shock me. The gummies was a huge thing for soccer players, at least for that team. So I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's get to some football here. And you actually managed to take the lead back. So I had it for a week, and then you leveled it, tied it all up. We'd been tied here briefly, and now you have a 2-game advantage. So, and we both had good records last week. I went 11-5, and you were 13-3. So it was a good week for both of us. Huge bounce back after a week where we struggled the one previously. So now we're back on the right track, really looking to continue it going into this week, where there are a few teams on byes. Whereas last week there was nobody on byes. We actually had 16 games that we had to pick from. But I come in with a record of 73-49, and of course your lead at 75-47. That is where we stand. And I know you texted me earlier today, actually saying, I don't know if I can go 13-3 again this week. There's some tough games on the slate. So we'll dive right in here and we'll see what we can do this week. And we'll start off with one on Thursday night that I think is actually difficult to pick. I don't know which way I really want to go on this one. I obviously know what I picked. I know the one that I chose, but I don't necessarily feel that confident. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans, really, they didn't ship off Derrick Henry at the trade deadline. They didn't really move too many guys away like you thought was potential at the trade deadline, because it's a Tennessee team that's really not that good. Now, they won this past week against Atlanta, but is Tennessee a contender to make it into the playoffs and make something happen? No, they're not. Now they also have their concerns of, we knew that Ryan Tannehill's time was coming to an end in the next couple of years. It was a matter of who's going to be the guy to step up in place. And it was almost looking like they blew their draft picks, Tennessee did, with Malik Willis and Will Levis. Well, Malik Willis has started to improve a little bit this season, but he still doesn't look like he's ever going to be the guy to be able to take over a starting role and be a starting quarterback in the NFL. I have my doubts about Will Levis coming in to the draft. He ended up sliding. And I will say that he's a strong arm. He's okay with his mobility, but he had a poor completion percentage in college because he forced so many throws and he doesn't read the defense that well. And again, I question his ability to throw a touch pass, similar to my concerns with a guy like Baker Mayfield. Had an issue with that and always wanted to sling it in there. And so again, and some issues with the accuracy there. He steps up in the game against Atlanta and he plays really well. And so everybody's thinking, I know you think this, Tannehill may never take another snap again unless Levis gets injured. I'm going to say that he's going to falter here before too long and look very human before too long. Now, because Ryan Tannehill might be out at the helm in the next couple of years anyway, and they're searching for the replacement here before too long, Levis is really going to have to struggle, I think, for him to get pulled at this point, with them knowing that they probably don't have a team that's going to be able to do anything this year. So they're going to probably try to get Levis as many reps as possible. So I'm with you that I think Tannehill's really not going to touch the football too much, but do I think Levis can be that full-time starter coming down the road? I'm still skeptical, but we'll wait and see. He's got a good test here going up against the Steelers team that might be with Trubisky as the starting quarterback if Pickett can't go. And Pickett hasn't been good this year himself. strictly the only way that the Steelers win any games this year is by their defense. Minkah Fitzpatrick is now on the injured list. Of course, Cam Hayward's really been out this whole year for them. So it falls on TJ Watt's shoulders. And they have some good defensive weapons, but this isn't a loaded Steelers defense. They just have enough pieces here and there that they're able to get some turnovers and make some plays happen. They've had some nice fortunes. I'm going to say this, though. The Steelers defense is good enough that they're going to make things difficult on Levis. And I think you're going to see that he's very human. Derrick Henry in the beginning of this week is on the injury report. Of course, we'll see if that ends up being anything that holds him out. My guess is no. He'll probably play. But of course, if you don't have Derrick Henry and you have to go with Spears is more of a third down back. You wouldn't have that powerful runner. So I'm going to go to the Steelers, but I'm going to say this is a very low scoring game, as Thursday nights are. But especially with how bad these offenses are going to be, I have this one at 17-12. 17-12 Steelers, going to be a clunker of a Thursday night football game, Vince.
I'll tell you what, there's two primetime games this week that jumped off the page to me. One, for this reason, this is going to be a clunker, like you said, I agree. And two, and we'll talk about it here in a little bit, a game that we're both very excited for, Cincinnati and Buffalo. Can't wait to see where we go with that one, although I got a hunch I think I already know. But as far as this one goes, here's the thing. I have stopped my traditional never picking a road team on Thursdays because actually the road team this season has a winning record on Thursdays. They've been better, crazy enough, right? Then I started looking at everything. Like you said, Minkah Fitzpatrick has been banged up. There's no guarantee he's going to play. I did read, however, that Kenny Pickett will play. All signs point to him playing. I actually think Trubisky's better. You know, we had a podcast the other night with Don Clary, and Mitch Trubisky's name came up. I love Trubisky. I think he's a player in this league. I really do. I think he can give us. I think he can be a solid backup for a long time. Now, is he the guy that I'm going to trust to drive the car to the Super Bowl? Probably not. So then I really started thinking deep about this. There wasn't much, if any, game film on Levis at all, right? Last week, Atlanta's been streaky to begin with, okay? So we're going to see, you know, can this guy continue to sling it? Is he going to start overthrowing receivers because he's so eager for the deep ball? There's a million things that could go wrong in Tennessee. I also don't believe they're the kind of team that could win two in a row. I don't think they're good enough this season to win two in a row, especially a back-and-back, on the road, short week, all that stuff. At the end of the day, when I first looked at this, I weighed everything. I thought to myself, I like this kid for one more week. Let's ride the hot hand. Let's go to Tennessee. Then I remembered something I wrote earlier in the year. And again, I don't really plug my own work very often, but I had to do it this time. About, I think it was week two or three. I wrote or it was like week three. It was week three. It was right after Pittsburgh had won back-to-back primetime television games. They had beat the Browns, and I think they beat the Raiders or something. And I said something out there like, man, I'm like, Kenny Pickett doesn't lose on prime time. He's 5-0 on prime time. Well, it's a Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. The kid doesn't lose on and by the way, I think it's terrible. But Kenny Pickett and Mike Tomlin, for whatever reason, do not lose primetime games. I'm gonna ride it one more time. I know, you know, I usually do my best picking when I pick the best team, the better team. In this game, I just don't know if there is a better team. So I guess I'm gonna have to fall back on my old stick with the streaks, stick with the records of past routines and histories and traditions. Almost said Cleveland, dear God. Pittsburgh, they're going to need to run the ball, though, right? We know this. Can they run the ball in Tennessee's defense? I think they can. So there's some options available for the Steelers. We're going to see if they can pull it off on a short week. I'm going with Pittsburgh too, but to echo with what Cole said, this is going to be a clunker of a game, not a game you're going to want to bet on. Lord only knows what's going to happen. You know, I call this the kind of game where I really start paying attention at halftime, you know, from that point on, because the first quarter, who knows? Something tells me in the first quarter and second quarter, we're probably going to see like a combined 3 turnovers, right? So there's going to be some monkey business like it always is in Pittsburgh, and they're going to find a way to win. I would love to be wrong about this pick. I'm going to be pulling hard for the Titans, but going to go ahead with Pittsburgh.
You know, I've really been able to watch Thursday night football games really through the first half of this season to this point. But now got men's soccer league starting up on Thursday nights again, and actually Dom Clary making his debut as our team's goalkeeper, joining us. So had some of our regulars who had some injuries, some guys who couldn't play, and Dom was eager to join and was asking, so he got added to the team. So he gets to make his debut with us on Thursday. But honestly, perfect Thursday for the league to start, because I'm not that eager to watch that one. I'll catch the first little bit before I leave, but I am not going to watch much of that one at all, and I'm actually not going to be too upset about that. But I would be upset if I missed some of that Sunday night football game, because it's the game that we didn't get to see last year, of course, because of the Damar Hamlin situation. The Buffalo Bills going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. That was the game that never really happened. It barely got started, and then everything turned south, and it was the talk of the world. It felt like, at least the sports watching world, and anybody who knew at least what went on for at least a couple days, and then weeks after, discussing how crazy that was. And of course, there are people who are not international soccer fans who hadn't witnessed the Christian Eriksen situation. They hadn't witnessed some of those other situations that are similar to that, but certainly scary with Damar Hamlin, right? Credit to the medical staff, and thankfully, of course, he's here. And now we get to actually see this game played a year late, not quite a full year, almost a full year late. But at the same time, like I said, these are two teams that they're good, but are they as good as last year? I don't know. They've stumbled. They both have stumbled to start this year, Vince.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Cole, for me, I need to double check something, because when I was doing my research earlier today, I could have swore that Cincinnati knocked Buffalo out of the playoffs last year. So I know they did the year before, but let me just double check something here, because if I'm wrong, I'm going to feel mighty foolish right now. So I had the Bengals knocking out the Buffalo Bills last year in a very, very snowy game in Buffalo in the playoffs. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that did happen, correct?
Correct. That game happened, right?
Okay, I'm sorry. So I just misunderstood you right now.
No, this is the first time they played in a regular season game since last year, and what happened.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize. So I got a little crossed up with what you were saying there.
No, you're good.
Yep. I mean, Cincinnati is a hard team to figure out, right? For the last couple of years, they've made waves in the playoffs. Clearly, 2 years ago, they went to the Super Bowl, Joe Burrow. They knocked off Kansas City on the road the week before. Like I said, I believe they beat what was ironically the top seeded Tennessee Titans. So Cincinnati has shown they could go on the road in the postseason and win big games.
Well, I think the best way to describe this is that game that Cincinnati won was a snowy game in Buffalo, right? And that was in the postseason. This is the first time they're returning back to Paycor Stadium in Cincinnati since that situation, because of course that was in Cincinnati.
Yeah. My apologies. Yeah, I knew that. I just I got crossed up there for a second. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just
you're good.
Eyebrows for a second. I'm like, what was I looking at today? Because I was trying in my brain. I'm like, wait a second, and that's one of those games I remember watching. So for sure,
yes, yeah.
It's scary to think the emphasis we put on football, and me and you more than anybody, really, we spend so much time, whether it's you do your Buckeyes podcast, we have the high school, we have the college, we have the pros, we have all that stuff, and there's so much time. I said this last year too, that every now and then you have to kind of step back a little bit, maybe put some things into perspective. For me this year, being at North Olmsted High School with Hayden Rios, scary situation on a flat board, EMS, the whole deal, horrible things. It's tough for players to bounce back from that. But like you've said, now this is nearly not a full year, but a good 10 to 11 months. And I really don't think going into this game that is going to be the focus at all, unless somebody makes it a focus, right? So yeah. Cincinnati is coming in. They've been playing better recently. Buffalo has really been one of the more inconsistent teams this year, going back to week one, then losing in London, and then coming back. They've really, really been hard to figure out. I feel, though, this is the kind of game where it's almost impossible to pick a winner. So, usually the flow is you let me know if you want me to pick first. So kind of out of this flow right now. Would you like me to make my pick?
Yeah, so I usually take the first game and then give it to you for the second one. So we're on the second one. You're good to go.
I was waiting for the words, Vince, where did you go with this one? Or Vince, where are you going with this one? I feel like a guy trying to find the corner in a wrong room.
I got you all tripped up here. Maybe it is the sugar. Maybe you did have more candy than you actually thought.
Right. I'm so used to waiting for your lead in and it never came. Okay, so all joking aside though, I know I'd be shocked if we don't pick this different because we picked it different every single time with the exception of the playoffs when I think we both picked Buffalo. I'm picking Buffalo again. Now, here's my reason why. To me, it's like, okay, so Cincinnati beat them in the playoffs. Cincinnati was winning that game before the DeMar Hamlin situation. It looked like they had their number and they figured something out. I just feel with Buffalo being 4-3, I don't see them being a 4-4 football team halfway through the season. They're in a must-win situation. Now, at the same time, I'm just going to pull this up as well. Ironically enough, man, Cincinnati, I'm sorry, a loss would make Buffalo 5-4. I apologize. But even 5-4 halfway through the season for Buffalo just seems absurd to think. Cincinnati, believe this or not, all 4 of their wins this year have come against the NFC West. How wild is that? So they've beaten the Seahawks, the Rams, the 49ers, and then another team that's eluding my brain at this exact second. But the thing about them is they still need to beat powerhouse AFC teams in the regular season. They've done it last year with Kansas City. They're looking to do it again this year with Buffalo, again, in that regular season. They too have been a little bit inconsistent, but I'll say this. I think that Joe Burrow is fully healthy. And I think it was going to take them a while to get him to that point. But we've seen the last couple of weeks what he could do. Now, I'll say this one last thing, again, in regards to Buffalo, and then one more point again for Cincinnati too, actually. But Buffalo, Stephon Diggs has found his flow. The last couple of weeks, him and Allen have made a connection over and over and over again. If they could keep that going, I think they look good. We've talked about how much you and I both like James Cook coming out of the backfield. They have those weapons. It seems to be working. This is the test. This is the test. I've said since day one, week one, I believe Buffalo, I did at least, and I still hopefully feel this way, I believe Buffalo should be a Super Bowl favorite in the AFC. This is about as must-win as it gets for really both these teams. Cincinnati, perhaps they're coming, cross-country back home after winning in San Francisco. Are they headed for another letdown? It's back-to-back huge opponents. Can they do it? If they do, they suddenly become probably the number 2 team all over again. No disrespect to the Baltimore Ravens, but if Cincinnati wins this game, it's going to be really hard not to say they're the best team in the AFC North. I don't know how you couldn't at that point. That being the case, though, I think really the true winner in this game is going to be the fans. This game here is those ones, like you said, you circle on your calendar, you wait for, and it's a perfect way to start November football. But officially, I'm going to go with Buffalo.
Well, they both had their stumbles, as we mentioned. Joe Burrow finally starting to look healthy. He's getting it clicking. The offense is looking better. Their defense, again, I think it regressed a little bit from last year, but it's still fine. It's still a defense that's good enough to help win them ball games. It's not going to cost them anything, which I don't really ever expect Cincinnati's defense to typically be a top 10 level defense. So I look at them and they're on the right track. I think the one NFC West team that you missed was the Arizona Cardinals.
It was.
Of
Easy to do.
The Bengals. Well, yeah, I mean, they're the worst one of that whole bunch at this point. And of course, then the Browns are lucky to get to play them here this week, and we'll get to that here a little bit later. But Cincinnati is better in the playoffs than the Bills. It's how it's been the last couple of years. The Bills have been better in the regular season than the Cincinnati Bengals. And for that reason, straightforward, you and I are on the same page, and we're both going with the Buffalo Bills. Because, like I said, the Bills, they managed to perform well in the regular season. And I think even though they've had their slow points so far, I think some of the injuries on defense, it's going to hurt them a little bit where they may not be able to be the top seed, which you think that they certainly have the ability, the talent to do so. But I still truly believe that they're better than the Dolphins in full, right? The Dolphins, everybody's wowed by the flashiness of their offense, but I still think the Buffalo Bills are more complete and have more potential to do damage in the postseason than the Dolphins do. So again, I feel good about how the Bills are going to shape up the rest of the year. They're going to really continue to get things clicking. They hit a good stride this past week. I think they're going to continue to stay in that stride against the Bengals. And I think for this, in this one, it matters to both of these teams. But I do think the Hamlin situation a little bit, and going back to Cincinnati, gives the Bills maybe a little bit more motivation that they didn't get to play that game there, and they want to go back to that stadium and win the game and have a positive outcome after what felt like a very negative situation. Was a very negative situation that ended up in hindsight being okay, thankfully, but it's not what they wanted out of that night, out of that game, and then kind of what transpired then after. So I think Buffalo's going to want to respond, and I think they do win that one in Cincinnati strictly just because they want to have the bounce back from last year, and they're the better regular season team, Vince.
And I would say this about it as well. I think, a few weeks back, before Buffalo kind of went on this little mini run here, if somebody would have said to us, what team is more likely to have a collapse this season and miss the playoffs completely, I think a lot of people would have said the Cincinnati Bengals. And I still kind of feel that way. It's like you want to build your house on a solid brick foundation, right? Well, what's the more solid foundation? I still feel it's Buffalo. Now, you say it all the time in your podcast, and you've said this a million times on our show as well. You could play a team 10 times, and they might win 9 of those times, right? But you might get them that one time, like the Browns got the 49ers a few weeks back. This is a game or a matchup, I should say, where I say it's 5-5. Play it 10 times, and that's how close this is. So again,
6-4 maybe at the most.
Yeah, I agree completely. And to me, again, we talked about that Thursday game being a clunker, kind of really not too desirable. This is one where I'm not leaving my house. I'm staying. I'm going to park myself and watch every second of this game. And I remember when I looked at it, I was looking through everything, and I first saw this was on Sunday Night Football, and I said, "Oh, thank goodness." I'm like, because if this was a normal 1:00 Sunday game and the Browns were playing, us in this Cleveland market, we wouldn't even get to see it. So this is easily the most watchable game on the schedule next week.
Yeah, I love to use that for that comparison. If these teams play 10 times, right, what would the potential split be? Because the thing is you only have to win once, right? Yep. The team might be able to beat you 9 times out of 10 because they're that much better than you. You just have to win one, right? And you can get the one time that season. So, but I certainly love using that comparison because this is one of those situations where this is not 8-2, 7-3. We're talking about 5-5, 6-4 if these two teams played 10 times. Wholeheartedly believe that, fairly level, and I think they match up quite well against each other. And it's kind of strength against strength in many ways. I think there's some similarities, slight differences, but I think there's plenty of similarities that it's just any given night for those two. So I'm looking forward to it. We could be completely wrong and the Bengals win this one, but we're both going Bills. But I expect a fun one. I really do. I expect that it's going to be back and forth and maybe come down to the final drive as well.
I believe it's the John Madden analogy for Madden football, right? You could say computer versus computer, sit back and watch it, and it's probably going to be 5-5. It's not like you're watching, the computer Kansas City Chiefs take on the computer St. Louis Rams or Los Angeles Rams or whatever, or a situation like that. So, yeah, no doubt about it.
Yep. So we moved to Monday Night Football. And Monday Night Football, the Chargers are back in prime time again against, guess what, a New York team, Vince. You love New York teams in prime time this year. Man,
terrible.
The Jets got so many games in prime time because of Aaron Rodgers, and then he's not even out there. We'll say this, interesting enough before we talk about this game. How about his recovery? I mean, from the Achilles tear to he's already throwing some drop back passes. I know he probably can't run yet, but I'll be honest. I'm thinking by the time we get to week 15, we may be having a conversation about Aaron Rodgers is stepping foot on the field again with the way he's progressing. If they keep winning games and are at least in the hunt, he may actually try to push it and get back a little bit sooner before the end of the season, Vince.
He is basically a genetic freak, but at the same time, he's very holistic. He grew up in California. His medical ways are a little bit different than us Northeast Ohio people up here. He's a different breed, and I don't want to offend anybody, so I'm not going to go in a certain direction. But he's a different kind of cat. So whatever he's doing seems to be working. Good for him. I think it'd be cool. I remember Adrian Peterson about, my goodness, almost a decade ago now. Like, Adrian Peterson came back from a torn ACL and led the league in rushing the next year, which was unheard of, right? It's an injury where everybody says, okay, at least 8 months at the bare minimum. So it would be kind of cool to see him play again this year. But if I'm the Jets right now, I'm actually a little bit bummed out that they did not go and trade for a quarterback today, whether it would have been a Tannehill or a Brissett. Not so much for, Joshua Dobbs, who ended up going to the Vikings, but the Jets are in a situation where that defense is damn good. And, they were benefited greatly last week by having to play the Giants, who ended up on their third string quarterback. The guy went 1 of 6 after he checked in the game for Tyrod Taylor. DeVito is his name. And they just, what a puke game, right? We talk about the other game being a clunker. This Jets-Giants game from this past weekend was just a nightmare. Again, all that being said, though, at the same time, the Jets are just not a good team on offense. They have so many weapons they did nothing with. Delvin Cook's still there. He did not get dealt today, which a lot of people were shocked about.
Except I will say that Breece Hall has really bounced back nicely from his injury. They've finally taken him off ice. He doesn't have a pitch count anymore, and he's playing quite well. So that was an awful game between the Jets and the Giants, but Breece Hall single-handedly carried that offense, Vince.
Yeah, and sometimes I wonder about the Jets if they're going to go ahead and do a almost like a wildcat formation with both those guys back there with Hall and Cook. I wouldn't be shocked by it. I think this week, though, I'm pretty sure we're probably going to go the same way on this. I'd rather talk about the Chargers. So I think the Chargers have finally broken through. They looked so good at points in that game against Dallas on Monday Night Football, the one where I needed Dallas to beat them so we could be tied. And, after getting my butt kicked the week before, that was such a big night. They seem to maybe figure something out that night. I don't know. They've looked stronger. They got beat by Kansas City, but again, that was Kansas City. The Chiefs always seem to beat them. Bounced back, had a huge week last week. I expect this game to be a blowout. I'm not going to go full Cole McDaniel and make a score prediction, but it would not shock me if the Chargers won by 2.5 scores, meaning 2.5 possessions, basically 14 and higher. I'll say that.
Well, the Chargers, we've talked about them a bunch, so I'm not going to touch on them this time. They played against the Bears, a Bears team that they've had their struggles this year. They've had their roller coaster, their ups and downs. Now, even though that the Bears have had their ups and downs game to game, I got to say this. I don't think there's any team that you can almost consider more bipolar, maybe, than the Chargers in many ways. And why I say this is there are teams that they'll go up and down from week to week. I don't think there's anybody that can hit such a high of a high to such a low of a low like the Chargers. And that's coming from somebody who supports the Cleveland Browns, right? Where we know the Browns have their ups and downs from week to week. But there are weeks where Justin Herbert and that offense and the way that their defense actually can play, if they're playing up to their full potential, and you look at them and say, this team could win the Super Bowl. This is a team that has so much talent on their roster that if they're clicking, they could maybe win a Super Bowl. And then the next week you watch them play against a weak team in the NFL and they struggle and they lose, and you're thinking, this could be a team that gets a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. I mean, the swing from so bad that they could get a top 5 pick to they got the talent to win a Super Bowl 1 week to the next. I just feel like that's what we see with the Chargers. And a lot of times it's when we pick them to win a game that they end up having that they look like a bottom 5 team type of week. So the swings, unfortunately for them, are so high and low. but I do think that the Chargers actually should continue to hit a little bit of a stride here where they win some back-to-back games. The Jets have still won some games. Have they been really convincing? Probably the most convincing they've been is that close one they played against the Chiefs. They didn't play that great against the Giants. The Giants were just so bad that they won that game. I don't care what DeVito's first name is. I mean, it felt like Danny DeVito was the one actually out there because they couldn't run the offense. So I'm going to say that the Chargers, they win this game. I think Breece Hall still plays a decent game. Garrett Wilson might get involved a little bit. He's unfortunately been a little bit quiet. He's probably been one of the most impacted guys because of the injury, unfortunately, to Aaron Rodgers. So Garrett Wilson's such a talent there at wide receiver, and he hasn't been able to quite perform to the same level as what we know he's capable of. I'll tell you who has performed well this year, and that's Keenan Allen. I think he's going to continue the run that he's had this season, and I think that offense of the Chargers, they get it done ultimately, Vince.
Yeah, a healthy Austin Eckler helps that team out a lot as well. We've said it. I'll echo your statement there. Very up and down, very streaky. You never know what you're going to get. But truly, the offensive talent there, being healthy, should help them. You just don't want their head coach to get in their way. I mean, that's basically what it boils down to. Now, you're going to have to play smart to beat the Jets. And it's not that because the Jets are very good. They're not. But they are well coached. Robert Saleh is a pretty good coach. And that defense, pretty darn good. The Browns got bit last year, being up by 13 points with 90 seconds to go. They lost their focus for 2 seconds. The Jets came up and bit them. You look at the game against Buffalo in opening night, second half, the Bills should have blew out the Jets. You look at Aaron Rodgers, his injury right off the rip there, 3 plays in or 4 plays in, sucked out all the energy from that stadium that night. Robert Saleh kept his guys in it, kept them focused. They came out in the second half, got a bunch of turnovers off of Josh Allen, and made things happen. They very possibly could do that again. They have a winning record, 4-3. It's hard to count them out, but when a team is on the road with a losing record and they're the favorite to beat the other team with a winning record, I mean, how crazy is that? Especially in prime time, you almost never see that. So again, I think this is not a sure thing of a pick, but I feel pretty confident that Chargers, if they play to the best of their ability, shouldn't have too many problems.
So, of course, everybody knows that our upset picks, that's the segment that comes up next for us. So I'm going to start off by saying this. I want to take it to Green Bay, and I want to talk about LA. The Los Angeles Rams are going to beat the Green Bay Packers. That's my upset pick. And I have to say that depending upon weather, right, we're actually starting to see some snow in some places here. Of course, that would help Green Bay, probably, if it snows up there and it's bad weather. But this Rams team's a little bit better than the Green Bay Packers. And it all starts with Stafford's been okay this year. He has Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua and some wide receivers he can get the football to. And I think they're good enough to go up against this Packers team and win. The Packers, they struggled. And even when I picked them against the Broncos this past week, they let me down. I had been going against the Packers pretty much this entire season. I finally went with them. And like I said, they didn't get it done. Easiest thing to say is I know it's a little early still, but I feel confident that I'm going to be right in the long run about Jordan Love. We need more time for it to play out. But Love bites, Vince. Straightforward. Love bites. And I'm going to say Love stinks.
Well, classic song selection there as well, as we were texting the other day. But gonna throw this out there. Matthew Stafford's very banged up. He has those thumb issues. There's no guarantee that he's even going to play this week. The best player on the Rams, not named Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp, was actually the running back, Kyren Williams, who is also now out for at least a few more weeks. He's been on the IR. So without a guarantee that their starting quarterback's going to play, and clearly the running back's still out, I'm not real sure about picking the Rams in this one. This is crazy because almost all season long, we really have flip-flopped on the Packers. I'm taking them again. After a few weeks ago, I said I wouldn't do it. But I think Jordan Love, again, it is what it is. This is something where I don't know if this guy's the answer, as you said. But For me in this game, because I flipped a little bit on this, but for me, it was more so the fact that, again, we don't know if we're going to get anything at all out of Matthew Stafford, if he's even going to play with those thumb issues. And with that being the case, I just did not want to roll the dice on a backup quarterback going into this game. That's the only reason why I took the Packers. I do not think the Packers are a good team. I think the Detroit Lions at 6-2 are so head and shoulders above everybody else in that division. It's not even funny. I mean, holy smokes. Like, they could possibly have that clinched by the time me and you are sitting in that press box in Canton. And again, I've always said those are mile markers, right? So that would be the first weekend of December. It's possible. If the Lions keep winning, nobody else has done anything. Minnesota's 2 best players are now hurt probably for the year, in Jefferson and Cousins. It's just a terrible division right now. But this is one of those games, again, where I am going with the home team strictly because of the injury situation. Not sold on Royce Freeman to run the ball for the Rams, as they had Kyrie Williams doing it. So, yeah, I mean, this is you're taking the Rams as an upset pick, but I almost see this as even Steven. But I'm going with Green Bay.
Fair enough. So what's your upset pick, Vince?
So let me pull it up here. There's a couple well, there's more than a couple games this week that could very easily go either way. I'm going to make everybody wait until our official picks come out, but I will tell you I have an official upset pick I want to talk about right now that I find to be, I mean, it's okay. So here's the thing about this pick. I'm taking let me just start off by saying my official upset pick is the Seattle Seahawks over the Baltimore Ravens. Now, that being said, Seattle looked terrible for 2.5 quarters last week, right, against the Browns.
Fair.
From about the mid-second quarter on through the last possession of the game, Seattle really couldn't do anything against that Browns defense. How much better is the Ravens defense than the Browns? A lot of people are going to tell you the Ravens have the best defense in the AFC, if not the NFL. I disagree.
No, absolutely not. The stats disagree too. I mean, the Browns have given up the least amount of yardage.
I'm not going to start a fight with anybody.
I will. Let's fight him right now.
There was a local radio host I just happened to be listening to a little bit ago. I'll let that go. It's talking about how great the Baltimore Ravens defense was. I'm like, I don't know how good they are, right?
Yeah, in 2002.
Well, this guy on the radio this evening, about an hour ago, felt a little bit differently. But again, don't want to pick any fights here.
They're still fine. They're still a good defense.
But they're not the best defense in the NFL. So
no, they're not.
That kind of struck me a little bit. You know what I mean? But more so than that, I think Pete Carroll is a very, very good coach, right? And I think he's going to go ahead and keep the Seahawks focused. So if they do get another early lead against Baltimore, on the road, and I get the whole West Coast team traveling to play an East Coast team at 1 o'clock, all that stuff, whatever. But I really think Seattle could do this. They're pissed off they lost to the Bengals. They almost lost to the Browns. I don't think Baltimore. I get the fact that they're 6-2. All right, and it's not like Pittsburgh Pittsburgh's 4-3 with smoke and mirrors. Baltimore's more of a legit 6-2, but I still do not believe that they're the best team in this division. I said it earlier tonight on the podcast. I believe it's Cincinnati. I believe it's a healthy Cleveland. Had Cleveland had Deshaun Watson, had Cleveland had Nick Chubb, I think it would have been a much different story when Baltimore came to town a few weeks back. There's nothing that Baltimore does besides running the RPO that really jumps off the page to me where I say, this is a deadly football team. Watch out for them. I just don't. I don't see it. They've taken advantage of a pretty weak schedule. I'm going to throw this out here too. All right. They beat the brakes off the Lions. I get that. And I got to talk a little bit lower because I feel myself starting to shout here. But the Ravens beat the brakes off the Lions. Then, Cole, I don't know if you saw it or not, they almost lost to Arizona. Arizona was down big in that game. Arizona scored a touchdown, got the onside kick, got a field goal, almost got another onside kick, and almost won the game. They shouldn't have been that close if they're that dominant with the Arizona Cardinals, whether it was on the road or not. If that defense was that good, that game allegedly should have been a blowout or a 3-point game. Or I'm sorry, they should have only let the Cardinals score 3. So again, there's all these things in my brain matriculating. I feel that the Seahawks are going to play better. I feel that the Seahawks are going to play 4 quarters of football. The fact that it's a 5.5-point spread, I know we picked these games straight up. But my goodness, I mean, 5.5 points. I don't even think Baltimore covers that if they do win. I'm going with Seattle to win straight up as my upset pick. I just think they're too good. That running back's dynamite too. Like the Browns shut him down. I don't think that kid gets shut down 2 weeks in a row.
So I'm a strong proponent of calling Lamar Jackson a running back. He really is. He's a running back who's good at throwing the football. Is he great? No, he's not great. He'll miss some open throws that a lot of these other top quarterbacks, they don't miss. But he's good enough. But it's where his elusiveness, the way he handles being in the pocket, knowing when to escape, the things he can do when he's running that football, and the RPOs, the quick decisions he makes, that's where he excels. That's where he really excels. My thing is this. I think the Ravens, they win the division as long as he stays healthy all year.
Right.
They're trending in the right direction to win the division because regardless of playing down to opponents potentially, as long as they keep winning, that's all that matters. I think if he's healthy all year, they win that. The thing is, going into the season, did I believe he'd have a full season? No, and we still have plenty of time left. We're only really at that halfway point. So the thing is, he's still got a lot of time he's got to go and stay healthy. Lamar Jackson hasn't played a full season. What, 3 years?
Nope.
So the thing is if that happens and he's out, the Ravens could falter pretty quickly and stumble offensively because they don't have a ton of great wide receivers out there on the outside.
Yep.
They have one of the weaker wide receiver cores in the entire NFL. Mark Andrews at tight end really helps hold up that group because of what he can do at the tight end spot. But then it's the RPOs, the running ability, how people have to respect Lamar that helps give Gus Edwards and those guys some room to run the football as well. So in general, like I said, the offense will really falter if Lamar's not in there. It's just all going to be dependent upon his health throughout the season. I am going to say this, though, that the Seahawks, they did have a stretch where they didn't play well. And I think Geno's actually better than he's maybe given credit for. I think Geno's actually done really well with Seattle. You said Pete Carroll's a really good head coach. I'm going to disagree a little bit. He's a great head coach at the college level. At the NFL level, I think he's pretty average. He's had some good rosters. He's had good teams. Sure, is the Super Bowl under the belt, but at the same time, are there a lot better coaches? I think there's more talented coaches out there. Got to give him credit. The old man can still sling the football for his age, right? We saw the video of him throwing, quite a few weeks back. But when it comes to coaching aspect, I think he's right at the tail end and starting to wind down a little bit. That's a Seahawks team that's decent, and I picked them to win their division this year. And with the 49ers beginning to stumble, they certainly have an opportunity to do so. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be tough to play against the Browns and that tough defense and have a tough game like that. And then you have to go on the road to Baltimore to play. In Baltimore, they've had some really good moments against some good teams, specifically when they played at home against the Lions and they smacked them. I think it's not going to be the same type of situation where they smack the Seahawks, but I have Baltimore winning this one. I think they get it done in this. It's just going to be tough for Seattle to play those two AFC North teams back-to-back weeks.
So I want to throw this out here too as well. A different game that's just to take you guys a little bit behind the show, right? As Cole said, most weeks, and every great once in a while there's an exception. Most weeks we film the show on Tuesday nights like we are this week. Mm-hmm. I make my picks Tuesday night. I'm sorry, not Tuesday night. Monday night after the Monday Night Football game. I go in and make all my picks. And then I check them again Tuesday morning or whatnot. And then again, we sit down and we do the show, right? And usually by lunchtime on Tuesdays, I know who I'm picking. I'm done. I'm not going to change anything, right? Just to take you guys kind of behind the show. There was another upset pick that I was convinced I was going to take. I had it penciled in last night, had him penciled in this morning, had him penciled in on my lunch break.
Washington.
You know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then they traded Montez Sweat and Chase Young.
You got it.
Yep.
I looked at that game and I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I don't think Washington crushes New England. I absolutely think they go into Gillette and beat them. And then they trade away their best two defensive players. I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that was a gut punch. So yeah, and I took New England, which again, you know, if you would have told me that Sunday night when I went to bed, last night when I went to bed, this morning when I woke up, I would have called you crazy. But here we are. I mean, and that's how quickly things can change. Now, why am I bringing that up? Why the hell did Vince McKee bring this up? I'll tell you why. Because you said his name 2 seconds ago. Montez Sweat. This was a guy the Browns could have got at one point. Cole put it out there. Go back and check the records. I don't know if you said it this season. I don't think you did. I think you said it maybe towards the end of in fact, you did. So in the playoffs last year, I had wrote an article about Myles Garrett, the Browns possibly trading him in the offseason. Montez Sweat was one of the names that you and I talked about. So
Josh Sweat.
What was that?
It was the Eagles. I wanted them to trade Myles Garrett to the Eagles and pick up Josh Sweat.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry, I had it crossed up.
Yeah, Montez is a great player. I mean, he's probably the better of the two, but I felt like that that the Eagles would be a good spot and it would actually pay a pretty penny to get a guy like Myles Garrett on that team, considering their Super Bowl chances. So I felt like you could have gotten Josh Sweat, a couple draft picks, maybe even another player or two.
I just figured this was another one, though, so I crossed up my Sweats. I apologize.
Yeah, you're good.
I'm curious, though. I mean, I brought it up. I did bring it up for two reasons. I am kind of curious as to who you're going with this one.
Oh, New England in that one.
And when did it switch? Was it like you just a sure thing? Like
I hadn't picked it. I hadn't picked the game until after the trade deadline had passed.
Okay. No, I mean just for whatever and giggles. I mean, what would you have took Washington without that trade?
I think so. Probably. I mean, it just signaled to me that I think their ownership group is seeing that, hey, this NFC is bad, but I don't think we have a chance of doing anything because we're so up and down. I think trading both of those guys away pretty much just signaled, hey, you know, we had Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, and Chase Young and Montez Sweat on that defensive line. That's one of the best defensive lines in the entire NFL, those four. And that was the strongest position group on that team. And I think they just basically signaled that, hey, we're shipping it in. If we win games the rest of this year, cool. If not, we're done. Ron Rivera, this is your final season. We're going to put a new coach in here. We're going to strip this all down. We're going to do this how we want to do it. Oddly enough, I'll tell you what a busy day for that ownership group, because Washington's owners are the new owners are the Philadelphia 76ers owners. They traded on the same day James Harden, PJ Tucker, Chase Young, and Montez Sweat off of their teams. They unloaded guys who are known as big names in the basketball and football worlds, respectively. They're just shaking everything up on their teams here at this point. And I'm almost shocked that Terry McLaurin is still there in Washington. I'm surprised they even kept some of their guys on their offense, because I'm like, they're tearing the whole thing down, but they stopped with their defense. So I have no clue what they're trying to do here this year, but Washington pretty much just killed their season in one day.
They did. And we do not have a basketball podcast, but I'm going to throw this out there. I cannot stand James Harden. He has to be, over the last 15 years, one of my least favorite basketball players and athletes. I can't stand him. And what's crazy about this, Cole, and I'm not going to move my computer. Don't worry. I'm not going to make everybody out there dizzy. But less than 2 arms lengths from where I'm sitting, if you guys could see my arm, I have a frame.
Is it James Harden poster?
Close. It's a cover of Slam magazine with James Harden on the cover, framed and shadow box. This thing was not cheap. And I'm sure people are like, well, why in the heck would he have done that if he hates James Harden? Well, typical Vince McKee luck. Years ago, I wrote a book about LeBron James and his return to Cleveland called Redemption of the King. Slam magazine, which was a national magazine at the time, was a huge deal. They ran an article on it. So they have a picture of the cover of my book. There's an article about that book. There's a little article about me. So of course I'm going to get it all framed. And as I look up at this, it's incredible because I'm staring at James Harden, who's on the cover, who I cannot stand. Steph Curry, who I don't care for either way. I think is a hell of a player, but whatever. But Steph Curry's in one of the little boxes because you know how magazines have boxes in the little corners. Tony Parker, who I actually love, so I'm fine with the Tony Parker picture, and then LeBron James, who I absolutely cannot stand. So Steph Curry, James Harden, LeBron James, Tony Parker, and Vince McKee, all in the same thing. It just cracks me up. I don't even know how in the world. Yeah. So,
man, there's only one good one of that bunch, Tony Parker.
Yeah, I knew you were going there. Yeah.
No, Vince, gotta give you credit. Best one of the bunch there.
I wish you would have knew me when I was famous, Cole. You would have liked me better. I was in magazines, newspapers, radio, television. I was everywhere. Back before Keon Sports, when we weren't competition. I was on a lot of stuff. But yeah, definitely one of my favorite moments would being recognized in a national magazine, no matter who's on the cover.
Well, let's put you to the test here. You know, Mr. I used to be famous. You would have liked me better than at that time. The Cleveland Browns, they didn't get the win against the Seahawks and certainly had the possibility to. I know you want to touch on that briefly.
Sure.
But then they're going up against the Cardinals here, a team that they should really win. And they don't have to worry about Josh Dobbs because basically the Cardinals already knew they were dealing him. It's obvious. There's no reason to bench him. And then it was like a day before the trade deadline, they're saying, we're going to go with Clayton Tune if Kyler Murray's not ready to go. It's like everybody's lights are going ding, ding, ding. It's going off. That means they're sending Josh Dobbs somewhere that actually needs him. They're going to field calls. And they were fielding calls, and he goes to Minnesota to replace Kirk Cousins for this year. Probably not going to start this week. Obviously, they're going to be prepped for probably Jaron Hall going to play, but Josh Dobbs will be that guy probably for Minnesota the rest of the year to try to give them somewhat of a chance. So it's either going to be Kyler Murray or Clayton Tune. So, and that's a Kyler Murray that's coming off of the injury. So probably lines up pretty well for the Browns regardless of who's in at quarterback, what's going on this week, at least with that defense, because I don't think the Cardinals offense is going to be able to test them too much. Of course, they're also down there starting running back in James Conner as well, who's been on the IR. But before we really dive into this one, Vince, your thoughts on that loss to Seattle? I know you put out an article, you have some things to say about the end of that game.
I do, and here's the thing. Stefanski made 3 crucial mistakes in that game. Stefanski and PJ Walker. I'm going to start with the Stefanski ones. Now, there was a couple drives there that were going well, and they tried a couple of trick plays, and one was something as simple as a wide receiver reverse. The other one was a flea flicker. Seattle defense was too quick. They blew both those plays up. It both led to second and longs. Now, one of the drives still ended up in a touchdown after all that. How were the Browns, the old Browns? They would have got blown out. I get all that. But they showed a lot of ability to overcome adversity. And that's where I want to go with this at the very end of the game, okay? I truly believe in my heart of hearts, and I think probably 98% of Cleveland disagrees with me, and that's fine. I don't mind being the oddball out every now and then. It was the right play call. The problem for the Browns there, it was the wrong guy. If that's Deshaun Watson, I think you make that play call 9 out of 10 times. He's going to be able to see over the line. He's going to see that Cooper's covered. He had 2 guys wide open. He could have checked down to Ford. I even think he could have found Donovan Peoples-Jones, I believe. I'm trying to think of the screenshot in my brain, or actually Njoku. The play call was right. The personnel was not. And what I mean by that was the quarterback. Kareem Hunt was having a hell of a game. Pierre Strong was having a hell of a game. You know, so they say, hey, hindsight's always 20/20, whatever. Maybe you could have ran the ball at the very worst. You don't get it. It's a 2-minute warning. You punt. You make Seattle go the distance of the field, something they hadn't done since the second quarter of that game. Are they going to be able to do it again? Actually, since the first quarter, because the only points they had in the second quarter was a field goal. Regardless, Stefanski went for the win. And it was a gutsy decision. It backfired, unbelievably backfired. But at the end of the day, I still say that you throw that ball on 3rd and 3. So many teams have been stopped on 3rd and 3 and even 3rd and 2 trying to run out of clock this year and have the punt anyways. Was it a disaster? Yeah. Should maybe have been a rollout. If he doesn't see anybody, he goes down, then you punt. Yeah. Again, love the play call. Don't love the personnel. Can't probably do that with PJ Walker. That being said, this is going to be a tougher game than people think. A 1-7 team, we've heard the wounded animal theory so many times in sports. You never want to fight a wounded animal. You never want to poke a wounded or whatever, a losing team that's desperate for a win, because they're going to go all out. They're going to do whatever they can. Clayton Tune, who knows? I couldn't tell you anything about this guy. I didn't realize he even existed.
He's a rookie. He's a rookie.
And that's, I mean, if he's not on Cole McDaniel's videos, and shout out for your NFL draft coverage and prep, unless it's a name that I've seen on TV a lot, I'm probably not going to know somebody of this extreme, right? Kyler Murray scares the crap out of me. I actually think Kyler Murray is a really good quarterback. I think he's better than Baker Mayfield. I said it for years. I would rather have him than Mayfield. Browns drafted one year too early on that fiasco. Again, all that being said, I'll say it one more time. The Browns should win this game. I believe they will. They are my pick. And it's a matter of now for the Cleveland Browns to erase the memory of Seattle as soon as humanly possible. Just get past this. Get to 5-3, and at the end of the day, if you would have told Browns fans you're going to be 5-3 at the 8-game mark, I think almost everybody would have took it. They looked terrible in that Baltimore loss. The Pittsburgh loss was gut-wrenching. This loss was gut-wrenching. They rebounded from all those losses with a win. We have not seen them stack losses together this season. Let's see what happens this time around. I don't believe the Arizona is good enough to come in here to Cleveland and get that win. They shouldn't. We'll see how it turns out, but this is definitely a winnable game. I'm going to close with this point. Browns need to put Deshaun Watson on the 4-game IR immediately. Immediately. You can even retroactive that in the NFL and say, okay, that 4 games would have started last week, against Seattle, actually. So it would be this week and then the next 2 weeks. This clowning around every single week with it is stupid. If they would have just did that after that Tennessee game, there's a good chance he might be healthy by now and back to normal. I know it sounds crazy, fans, and a lot of people out there are probably watching this saying, what is he talking about? But yeah, 1 or 2 plays could screw up an entire rehab. Cole played soccer.
Yeah.
He played soccer in high school. He's one of the most athletic human beings I know. I know you're going to agree with this. Sometimes all it takes is 1 or 2 plays during your rehab where something goes wrong. Guys, even if he didn't play, how many times, especially in the world of boxing and MMA, but how many times have you heard, hey, this guy had a setback with his rehab and he didn't have contact with anybody besides a treadmill and a weight machine, right? Watson got slammed to the ground. Whatever that did, it probably sent him back another 2 to 3 weeks. That one decision to play him against the Colts is biting the Browns in the butt so hard right now, it's ridiculous. If you would have figured Tennessee, which was at the end of September, right? So you would have figured he would have sat out back then, let's say 4 games. Baltimore, San Francisco, the Colts, the Seahawks. There's a chance he could have been back this week to play the Cardinals. And if not, still winnable games. You send him out even a 5th week, and then you have him back for a trip to Baltimore, which is going to be a mammoth game. So I just feel like the Browns right now need to make a decision, need to let the focus take over. I'll make this one last point. And I know I already said this a couple times. I will say this about PJ Walker. I thought he looked good. I thought he looked a hell of a lot better. Yeah. He was aggressive. He was fine with running out of the pocket. He made throws. As I wrote in my article, the problem was he had 3 bad plays, and my God, did it burn the Browns. And the one really wasn't even his fault. The first turnover, it wasn't his fault. The turnover with Njoku, definitely his fault. The block, you could say, or the fumble, you could say, okay, Wills missed the block. That's 50-50. You still got to hold on to the ball regardless. But you take away, I know you disagree, and that's fine because you're going to talk. But my whole point here is that, and I literally think I put it in the cover of the article, or the headline of the article, he played well enough to win. he easily played well enough for the Browns to win. You saw what he could do. It was those costly turnovers. So a rough night. The Browns need to rebound, and they need to rebound quickly.
So a lot to go over. So
Yeah, thank you. We have the floor.
I'm gonna make this this very short. Stefanski called a nearly almost flawless game. He was awesome in that game, which really helped give the team a chance. His call on 3rd and 3 was the wrong decision, right? A lot of people out there saying it's the right play call. I completely disagree. You have to call the play based on the personnel that you have as well and what's working. There'd be some games that make sense to call that play, and there's some games that it doesn't make sense to call it. It's not in every game basis. And in that game, that's not the right play call. That game, the Seahawks couldn't stop your run game. You were running the football for 5-6 yards all the time. Like, they would have a 2nd and 10, they'd run the ball and get to 3rd and 3. It was constantly happening. So, and it was a lot of times happening with Hunt. So the way they were running the ball with Hunt was really going well. So I would say on 3rd and 3, you had 2 decisions there. You either bring Hunt onto the field and you have a polar in front of him and let him follow the polar and see if he can get those 3 yards. Or I think you know that there might be some pressure coming from the Seahawks, knowing it's 3rd down, and you run a screen up the middle to David Njoku, because that could not be stopped either by Seattle. I think you'd have all those blitzers, and you'd release that thing to Njoku, who's got room over the middle, and I think he could easily get 3 yards, if not bust off a much bigger gain there. So I think those should have been the 2 things that they should have thought about there. The throw certainly wasn't great on that play call. Certainly, P.J. Walker could have looked to his left. He could have checked it down to Ford. They probably should have had maybe David Bell out there on the field for that play specifically, just because he's a guy who gets to the sticks and sits down and he catches the football. We know it against the Niners. He got that 4th down that was huge, which helped them ultimately. But Walker did try to force it to Cooper, as they were trying to force it pretty much all game to him. It was tight coverage. If it even made it over the helmet there of Adams, again, it wasn't going to be completed on that play. So not the right play call. I thought it was probably about the only decision that I thought was poor from Stefanski. That being said, the team obviously has an opportunity to bounce back. I'm going to say this. The only thing I'm disappointed about for the Browns at the trade deadline is they didn't make any change at left tackle, because I've given Jed Wills different comparisons. I called him a screen door, right? Just always swings open. Today I'm going to call him a block of Swiss cheese, right? Not only is he not very good, but he's holy, okay? Not in a good way, right? Everybody's just running through that guy. He's terrible. Honestly, I think a block of Swiss cheese might be more valuable there at that left tackle position. We'll run with 4 linemen and just a massive block of Swiss cheese. But to be honest, they didn't make that move. Regardless, they're going with Jed Wills. What I do say is a good thing is Donovan Peoples-Jones was going to be gone at the end of this season. So at least you got some value out of him, right? He was going to walk in free agency. I guarantee it, especially with his usage not being up to where he'd want it to be this year. You didn't really hear complaints from him. Credit to him. He really has not complained at all in the media. He was quiet about it, but we know a guy like that was silently stewing a little bit where I want some targets, right? Credit to him. He just showed up to work and did his job, and I give him a lot of credit for that. But sending him away was the smart decision, because even though it's only a 6th round pick, you got something for the guy who's already going to be gone, and you had already known that he was probably going to be gone into this year. So you drafted him a replacement in Cedric Tillman. They already knew Cedric Tillman was the direct replacement for DPJ, and now they're just going to play him a little bit sooner. We'll get David Bell probably some more reps, but especially Cedric Tillman. I'm fine with it. So ultimately, I'm fine with them not making a ton of moves. I'm with you on the Watson thing. I'm not going to talk about that more. I completely agree. But I do think against the Cardinals, they're going to win this game. Their defense is too good here. Even if they have some offensive struggles, Walker's good enough to lead that team out there. He's got some good moments. He just needs to clean up some of the turnovers. But I think that comes with experience, and that comes with time, and it comes with being in a system for a while. And you have to think PJ Walker hasn't been on this team for all that long. And I thought he's done a really good job filling in, commanding the offense, running the offense, and showing his leadership. I like what I've seen from PJ Walker. If he can clean up a little bit of the ball security, I think there could be some good things here the next few weeks. Because again, I'm with you. I think there should be more weeks that Watson's out to try to rest up and get healthy. This is when you should win without your starting quarterback, and that I think that they do. So I just touched on everything there, but I'm with you. The Browns win against the Cardinals.
Yeah, and I'm really glad he brought the DPJ things. As much as I talked there, I didn't even mention that aspect. The Browns weren't going to get anything in return. Love the move. Love the fact that David Bell is going to get more touches. We're going to see what this year's pick could do as well with Tillman. They didn't utilize him. They didn't do anything with him. And he couldn't get open. The guy couldn't get open. Let's see what happens. The Browns over the years, going back to the Butch Davis era, so we're going back to almost 2 decades. It seems like every time they trade wide receiver, whether it was Kevin Johnson, OBJ, well, they actually cut OBJ, and now with DPJ this season, they always seem to have a huge game the following week. It's wild how that works. So even though he's not as high profile in Cleveland as those first 2 guys were, I think you're going to see a little bit extra juice out of this receiving core.
Agreed. Elijah Moore's been picking it up. I think Cooper's had some uncharacteristic drops this year, but I think he's still obviously their go-to guy. And I believe that Tillman, with his size, he's going to get an opportunity to go out there, and I think he'll step up. And again, I'd love to see David Bell run some more routes as well. And again, he's not a guy who's going to put up 100 yards, but if he gets 4 or 5 receptions for 35 yards and he moves the chains 3 times, I'm pretty happy there. So that's all you have to do is you have to move the chains, and as long as you have a wide receiver who can sit underneath and has sure hands, let the other guys stretch the field. And I think they have enough guys that they have different dynamics where Moore, Bell, Tillman, Cooper, they're all so different from each other. Nobody's redundant anymore. DPJ and Tillman, aside from DPJ's return ability, they were kind of redundant, I thought. And that's why you didn't see Tillman on the field. I'm fine with it. I'm fine with what they did. They got value back. So I'm not complaining. Others were complaining, right? But I think you and I, we're content. We're pretty happy.
The thing too is, I'm not the biggest David Njoku fan, but I have to say he's been one of the underlying MVPs this season. Njoku's played great. You have him as a receiving threat as well. I love when they set up that screen pass to Kareem Hunt and block for Kareem Hunt. I have no problems with that as well. So you have so many different passing options that could fit that scheme. One last thing too, I'll say, because you brought it up, Moore has been playing playing better. Elijah Moore has been playing actually very, very well. Going back to that game against the 49ers, that drive everybody keeps talking about where the Browns ended up getting that field goal, he was open on the first 2 plays of that drive at the very end of the game. PJ Walker just missed him badly. Repeatedly. He missed him badly a couple times last week too, unfortunately. But time and time again, Moore's finding a way to get open. Love David Bell. Hopefully we finally get to see what we've been clamoring for season and a half now on that. So to me, it's an exciting move. It wasn't anything splashy. Did we want a better quarterback? Probably. Was a better quarterback available? No.
I didn't.
Tannehill was not going to just pick up the Cleveland Browns playbook tomorrow and start Sunday. That wasn't going to happen. And it really looks like he wasn't even on the trade block. So that wasn't going to happen. You already knew what you were going to get out of Joshua Dobbs. Clearly, they didn't want to do anything with him, or they would have kept him in the first place. That wasn't going to happen. And then I would have been okay with Jacoby Brissett. But again, at the end of the day, it's a matter of clarity above all else. I want to throw this out there as a 41-year-old who's going to be 42 in a couple months. I have to say this, just a cool factor for me on this one. These 2 logos. All right, I know you're saying like the Browns don't have a logo. They do. It's their helmet. But the 2 logos, if you look at them on Yahoo Sports or ESPN Sports, have not changed since I've been a little boy. So you're going back almost 40 years of that same, what used to be a St. Louis Cardinal, then it was a Phoenix Cardinal, now it's an Arizona Cardinal, that same Cardinal head, which is just so cool, and the Cleveland Browns helmet. So I know it's kind of dorky, but for me, I like the little things. So this whole matchup kind of reminds me of my weekend. I'm sorry, of my childhood. The other funny thing too is that there's a couple games this week where you have that West Coast team coming in to play somebody on the East Coast in the AFC North. So you have the Arizona coming in to play Cleveland, and as we spoke about earlier, you have Seattle coming in to play Baltimore. So just kind of neat how they do that.
So first of all, last thing I want to say, I feel like I was about the only guy in Cleveland who didn't want Jacoby Brissett. Like, seriously, it felt like the entire city was clamoring for the guy. I am thankful for what Jacoby Brissett did last year. Stand-up character, good leader, played well. Does he fit the system? He does not fit the current system anymore. No. The Browns have literally grabbed quarterbacks that they think if Watson is out, they can run the plays that Watson can do. We might limit it a little bit, but it's the same thing. We don't have to readjust everything. Walker can do RPO. DTR can run the RPO. Okay. It's the same type of system. If you bring Jacoby Brissett in, he's going to be under center. It's going to be a lot of ground and pound, play action. And then what's going to happen? Stefanski's going to have to then try to reset the whole thing for Watson comes back. And once Watson comes back, he'd unfortunately probably end up running some Jacoby Brissett like plays that he did last year, and it was a struggle. So I'm going to say I'm happy he didn't come back. Thankful for his time last year. Thankful we're rolling with PJ Walker for right now, and then also then keeping the fingers crossed on Watson. So that being said, I think in hindsight, it's best that nothing happened there at the quarterback spot.
Yep. Again, it would have, to me, it would probably been fifth round, maybe a fifth rounder, maybe you don't go higher than that for Brissett. So everything I'm being told, I don't know how many people out there know this, it's not a big deal, but I'm actually one of the Browns beat reporters for WAKR radio, so I was on the phone with Ray Horner, who runs that show, a little bit earlier today, and we've discussed a few things on his show as well, where it's a matter of how much do you want to give up when you know that your actual starting quarterback, who you're paying the big budget for, the guy you traded 3 draft picks, how much you want to disturb? It's just, there's too many unknowns. There's way too many unknowns for the Browns to do anything more than probably a 5th round pick. And clearly, Washington was asking for a lot more than that. They didn't get it. Let's just move on with life at this point.
Well, from everything I saw, the Browns only offered a 6th. And Washington wanted more than a 6th.
Right. They wanted, from everything I'm hearing, they actually wanted a 3rd or a 4th. And if that was the case, I think the Browns would have been beyond stupid to do that. So I'm okay with just moving par.
Yep, absolutely. Well, really, that does it for the show. Any final thoughts for you, Vince?
Fun week ahead. Looking forward to these games. There's a couple great ones out there that should be good. Obviously, Philadelphia and Dallas. We did not touch upon that. We did touch upon the Sunday Nighter, which I think is going to be fantastic. Hey, man, if you want to go to church on Saturday night, I would recommend it, because Sunday morning at 9:30 in the morning, there's a game coming from Germany. And if you want to find a way to watch it, I suggest you guys do. That Miami versus Kansas City game, that is extremely intriguing to me. How much was Kansas City, were they thrown off by the flu? Patrick Mahomes, was he thrown off by having the flu? Did they take Denver lightly? Was it the Travis Kelce not having his girlfriend in the stands, the fact which we're making a big deal about right now? He had a bad game, but his girlfriend wasn't there. Stupid stuff like that, right? Minnesota versus Atlanta. Desmond Ridder, he's nails at home, but will he even play? It looks like it's going to be Taylor Heineke in that game against the Vikings. There's just so many storylines this week. I love when we get to this part of the season. This, to me, really heats up the fact that we're only 2 games apart. That sounds about right. That seems to be our Halloween split every single year. Just teams that should win, right? The Saints should be able to beat the Bears. That shouldn't even be a game, but let's see what happens there. The Bears have been so streaky this year. They're winning games out of nowhere. They've only won 2, but both times it was like, where did that win come from, right? So many crazy things. Can Carolina string together 2 straight wins against the Colts, which, again, Do the Colts, are they terrible? Are they decent? What's going on with them? They've been impossible to pick this year. Tampa Bay versus Houston, got one quarterback we hate, got one quarterback we love. So there's so many storylines this week. As we were trick-or-treating a little bit earlier, I'll admit I checked my phone a couple times, just looking again at the picks one more time in my brain, thinking about any last-second switches. So just so many good ones out there. And then the clunkers, so many clunkers. Giants versus Raiders. I don't know if you could pay me to watch that one. But those games, at the end of the season, those are the kind of games that are so difficult to pick. It sometimes makes the difference between the two of us. So a lot of fun this week ahead. I'm looking forward to it. As we always say, high school football playoffs. Check us out, Key on Sports. So many cool things going on right now, Cole.
Well, next week, you don't want to miss it. We're hitting that time of the year that my backdrop may look slightly different come next week. For myself, Cole McDaniel, and Vince McKee, that does it for the Climate Tech Inc. NFL Prediction Show for Week 9.
Climate Tech is a full-service company. We install as well as service both residential and commercial products. We service furnaces, air conditioners, heat pumps, boilers, mini split systems, tankless hot water. We've got a good group of technicians that have been developed into a company culture that delivers a good degree of confidence to the customer and gives us a good product output. They want to take care of the customer and make sure that the customer is satisfied with their service. And when you've got non-stressed employees at your home, you're going to get a greater result from that service call or from that installation. Our customer needs, comfort, and health are of utmost importance, and we strive to provide that to every customer within their budget. As we continue to grow, we remain focused on maintaining our high level of customer satisfaction. When you hire Climate Tech, you're hiring a whole team of experts that have been in the business well over 80 years. If you're looking for a new install, if you're looking for just maintenance on your equipment, we are the company of your choice.